This podcast is made possible by you, the supporters of WPLN and WNXP, Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's April 7th, 2025. On this day in 1999, the World Trade Organization ended a long-running trade dispute between the U.S. and the European Union. And I'm telling you, the whole thing was bananas. Oh, sorry, I left out a word. It was about bananas. You see, before the European Union was formed in 1992, some of its member nations used a system of tariffs or quotas to favor agricultural imports from their former colonies or from other developing economies that they wanted to help out. When the Union formed, it developed a complex system of both tariffs and quotas to essentially continue the practice. And that effectively expanded it to some of the biggest markets in Europe that hadn't previously favored those imports, like Germany. Bananas were particularly affected, and the U.S. did not like that. You see, in the Venn diagram of foods grown in the developing world, foods that Europeans like to eat, and products that the United States also exports, bananas are right there in the spot where all the circles overlap. Now, other countries were upset too. 5 Central and South American nations without that favored status complained first. The Europeans adjusted their system a little as a compromise. But then Chiquita and the Hawaiian Banana Industry Association filed a formal petition with the World Trade Organization, claiming that the U.S. market share in Europe had been cut in half and calling the whole system discriminatory against the U.S. It took 5 years for the case to move through the international organization. In that time, there was a full-on banana trade war with threats of retaliatory tariffs and debates over whether the proposed solutions would devastate smaller economies in the Caribbean and Africa. The WTO technically decided in favor of the United States, but the specific sanctions and plan for moving forward weren't quite what U.S. officials wanted. By that point, the banana trade war had lasted through the entirety of the Clinton administration. And when George W. Bush took office, he decided he did not want to continue the fight. The headline in one British newspaper declared, "Peace breaks out in transatlantic banana war." I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with some historical context. From Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. So, as I'm sure you're well aware, we are in trade war mode again. The U.S. against the world, pretty much. Bananas will be involved, but also coffee, cheese, nuts, seafood, beef, rice, booze. And that's just thinking about foods that are probably going to start costing us all more. China has announced retaliatory tariffs, and on Thursday, Canada struck back too, in a way that could have a really big impact on one of Tennessee's major industries. Our neighbors to the north have imposed a 25% tariff on American-made vehicles. Now, that doesn't apply to auto parts, but the Nissans that are assembled in Smyrna, the Volkswagens made in Chattanooga, the Cadillacs put together at GM's Spring Hill plant, those are fair game. And in fact, a recent analysis of trade data suggested that our community is one that will feel the Canadian trade war the most. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce ranked American metropolitan areas by their economic connections to Canadian firms, and Nashville was number 5 on the list. That's based on both the number of products we export there and the percentage of our GDP that's created by that trade. That report estimates that fully a third of our local exports go to the Canadian market, and that lines up with other reports that call Canada the top export market for Tennessee as a whole. Now, overall, exporting to Canada creates less than 2% of our local GDP. But for the individual businesses that sell to Canada, a trade war could have a much larger impact and cause a new set of ripple effects. And of course, it's not just Canada that we have to worry about. China is also a really big market for our exports and the source of nearly 20% of the imported goods we buy. Bottom line, it may feel like these fights are between folks in D.C. and the other world capitals, but we're likely going to start feeling this trade war in Nashville very soon. In just a few minutes, we hear about some of the restaurants that opened during the pandemic, coming up after the newscast.
You know how important WPLN News has been to you and your family, and you have seen how high-quality local journalism is necessary to a thriving community. You can ensure that this service stays strong and stays available to all of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Join the Producers Circle with your gift of $100 or more each month and make the bold statement that you support the mission of a more informed and engaged community. Start your philanthropic journey with Nashville Public Radio today at WPLN.org.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. The death toll from last week's storms has risen to 10, according to the Tennessee Department of Health. Severe weather plagued the state for multiple days, bringing tornadoes, 75-mile-per-hour winds, and flooding. 5 people have died in McNairy County, 2 in Fayette, and individuals in Carroll, Obion, and Tipton counties have passed away as well. McNairy County saw an EF3 tornado with 160-mile-per-hour winds that damaged more than 300 structures, according to the county's emergency management agency. Nashville's National Weather Service office has confirmed at least 7 tornadoes throughout the mid-state. Flooding was the biggest concern over the weekend, with multiple waterways reaching moderate flood stage or higher. Port Royal and Clarksville is forecast to reach major flood stage, and parts of the Duck River are anticipated to crest today or tomorrow, according to the Weather Service. Montgomery and Obion counties have issued voluntary evacuations in areas that are prone to flooding, and wastewater treatment plants are beginning to see impacts of the excessive rain, especially in counties to the west of Nashville. Flooding is anticipated to continue through the week. As of this morning, about 4,000 homes and businesses are without power in Tennessee, including 1,800 in Davidson County. Nashville was among more than 1,300 locations across the nation holding massive protests against Trump administration policies on Saturday. The Hands Off campaign took aim at what organizers call Trump's attacks on individual freedoms and slashing of federal funding for health, social service, and education programs. Some in the crowd at Centennial Park said they'd never protested before, including Boris, who gave only his first name and showed up with a guitar and a chant.
I used to support Trump. The line in the sand for me is when I saw the AI-generated promotion video of a Trump Gaza resort. That's genocide, and he's making light of that.
Lanny Glipp is one of several veterans who braved the weather to attend the rally.
I've slept in the mud before. A little rain doesn't bother me.
He said he worries about cuts to Social Security benefits and veterans' health care. The Trump administration has set its sights on altering the Social Security Administration and the Department of Veterans Affairs. The proposed changes could leave millions vulnerable.
A lot of veterans are going to be facing catastrophic living situations, and I don't think they've thought this through. You know, it could get really, really bad.
At a separate virtual statewide event on Zoom, several politicians addressed about 500 participants. The only one who spoke at the in-person protest in Nashville was State Senator Heidi Campbell.
I think Nashville is the tip of the spear for the War on Democracy and for Project 2025. We have a history of doing this, and this is definitely one of those times.
Similar protests took place in cities across the country like New York, Boston, Washington, D.C., and elsewhere. Approval for Nashville's mayor, Freddie O'Connell, remains high at almost 70%, and that approval is reflected in how residents view their city's direction. WPLN Cynthia Abrams breaks down the findings from the latest poll out of Vanderbilt University.
More and more Nashvillians feel the city is on the right track. More than 1,000 registered voters were polled, and many respondents still have some concerns, namely affordability. The cost of living, particularly for low-income residents, emerged as a top priority alongside education and housing costs. One big change from last year? Transportation is less of a concern after Nashville passed its transit referendum in November.
Find out more about what respondents have to say at WPLN.org. A federal judge has temporarily stopped the Trump administration from cutting more than $11 billion in federal health funding. Nashville's mayor says this injunction, issued by a judge in Rhode Island, offered some temporary relief to the city as it reels from recent cuts. Last week, Metro's public health department saw 3 COVID and infectious disease grants eliminated. 7 to 8 positions were lost, and measles vaccine clinics were impacted. Now Metro is facing more federal cuts that would impact their care for infants, new mothers, and people living with HIV. The The directive results from a lawsuit filed by 23 states and the District of Columbia. Tennessee is not part of that lawsuit, but if the parties that brought the complaint are successful, it could provide nationwide relief for city departments relying on federal health grants for funding. Sad news now from the Nashville Zoo. Its rare clouded leopard cub died on Friday from intestinal bleeding. The cub was born in late February and captured the hearts of Middle Tennesseans and listeners who heard about the cub here on WPLN. In an emailed statement, the zoo said the cub developed bleeding on April 3rd and did not survive despite the effort of veterinarians. The exact cause of the bleeding has yet to be determined. Clouded leopards are considered vulnerable to extinction due to deforestation, poaching, and the pet trade. Researchers estimate there are only about 10,000 clouded leopards left in the wild. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. 5 years ago, COVID-19 halted daily life, shuttering schools, churches, and businesses. Some never reopened. Despite the bleak outlook, some brave restaurants opened in 2020. And this is Nashville producer Josh Deepin takes us into their kitchens.
In 2020, eating at a restaurant was the last thing on people's minds. Still, Creve Hall Bagel Company opened its doors in 2021 with generous support from the neighborhood. Founder Ben Cornfield gave me a look at their daily bagel prep and how they keep up with the demand.
These are all the rosemary bagels and blueberry bagels. Right over there is going to be boiling them. The boil is what helps give like the crunch on the outside because it's kind of like a par bake. And then to keep the inside nice and soft.
Now they are open 7 days a week with another location coming soon to Inglewood. That's a far cry from its beginnings in their home kitchen, much like Flower Your Dreams Bakery and Cafe. Co-owner Danny Greenberg wakes up hours before most of Nashville to ensure baked goods and coffee are ready to go at doors open.
We usually start around 5 a.m., get ovens heated up, and start baking around then. There's usually a lot to prep. We have probably close to a dozen different options first thing in the morning.
The Hermitage business keeps things exciting. Pastry chef Ashley Gleason gets to experiment with limited-time offerings. Let's see what seasonal Danish she came up with for this week.
There's a tomato confit on the bottom, house-made ricotta, and then just some dressed arugula and olive oil and lemon juice and toasted pistachio.
Oh, that's just what I was thinking. Yeah. Perfect.
Pitmaster Scott Hanner at Singletree Barbecue in Murfreesboro was less forthcoming about the ingredients.
It's our house signature rub.
Okay, so you can't tell me that?
Nah, I'm not going to tell you what's in it. We basically pull them off once they're smoked, and then we cool them down, and then we basically deep fry them for service.
These places keep their recipes very close to their chest. All the more reason to check them out in person. Reporting for This Is Nashville, Josh Deepin, WPLN News.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nash Villager newsletter, too. You'll get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at WPLN.org/NashVillager. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.